Hi Sam, nice to meet you
Hello.
today. You okay?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, and you. So anybody that's listening today, well, I've known Sam for ever since you were born, haven't I, Sam? So
Yeah, yeah.
your mum is my best friend. So we've known each other a long time. And I've asked Sam on today to have a chat because Sam left education around 6 years ago and has had a really interesting career to where he is now over those 6 years. So I thought it'd be really great to get you on and talk about what you've done over those 6 years and then sort of any top tips you've got as well. So yeah, does that sound okay?
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, brilliant. So you left education 6 years ago.
Yeah,
So what happened? What was your thought process when you left education?
yeah. It's quite interesting. I started out doing A levels. I kind of followed on from the subjects that I was doing at GCSE, and chose kind of the equivalents going into A level. So I used to do resistant materials, which is basically like DT, and that's what that became. And then I basically they had a course that was that combined with art called 3D design, which I went into kind of half expecting it to be like 3D modeling on a computer, which a lot of people did. They had to kind of the open days they just talked about it and had to kind of dispel that myth as part of it. But it was more of kind of taking a more artistic approach to designing things and then going off into the workshop and building them, which is a really good course. And I think that was kind of a path for people to go into architecture and that kind of thing. And the other thing I did, because I was interested in music and was in a band at the time, was music technology. So I just kind of like married those interests together. Didn't study music at GCSE, but wanted to kind of have a chance to do it. But as part of the original kind of courses that I took, they got you to like an extracurricular thing that was like a fortnightly basis. You had a session with one of the tutors that wasn't necessarily one of your teachers that would kind of teach you something that was different. I think from memory it was stuff like languages and that kind of thing that was an extra thing that you can then put on your CV and your kind of academic roster and then go on to uni with kind of an extra thing. And I did employability, which went into more of kind of what you can do after uni or A levels or kind of to get into work, which is a really good course. And through kind of in that first year, they described kind of simultaneously at the same time I was being told this is how you build up UCAS points, this is what the future can look like in terms of going on to uni. They were kind of presenting the alternative view, which was if you want to go straight into work or you want to do an apprenticeship, this is how you do that. So the decision to leave A levels kind of halfway between, which looking back was one of those things where I was part of the generation that the next year, if I'd have stayed on, was COVID. So I could have stayed on and got like the predicted grades and all that kind of thing. So kind of good and bad because you kind of had the whole thing of people getting lower grades and then getting their kind of actual predicted grades and all that kind of thing. So I kind of missed out
Quite a
on
brave
that.
move, though, isn't it? To decide that you're gonna leave that course.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah, yeah. So I knew I kind of hadn't really pieced it together in terms of it's a long time ago now. It's kind of didn't realize how long ago it was until literally we said just now. Um, but yeah, I knew going into A levels that I just wanted to continue what I was doing educationally, but didn't want to go to uni. I kind of knew that that wasn't really for me. I think the kind of path to because I think part of it was I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, so it felt like really daunting to kind of go through and at that age, kind of 17, 18, when you graduate to or when you kind of leave A levels to pick something that I was going to do for 3 more years and then get a job in. I kind of hadn't really figured it out. I kind of could have gone down the technical route or followed on either the artistic route or the music route or whatever else and done something in that. But there was no guarantee of a job at the end of that. And of course, with COVID, that ended up being the path that I took was a good route into it over that time. But it's one that maybe wouldn't have happened if I'd have kind of gone down the uni route.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. So then you decided to leave, and then
Mm.
what did you then go on to do after your, the A level sort of season?
Mm. So, yeah, as I say, it was the first year of A levels. So I left with AS levels that I still have on my CV and kind of just to say that I kind of studied something further than GCSE. Um, and the kind of I was lucky enough. It was they clearly had planned it out, but the company that I got a job with first. So basically through employability, they talked about apprenticeships, and that really stood out to me as like if I want to do something and then do that as a career, to both train and practically be doing it is like the best kind of situation in terms of marrying those two things together, and then I can kind of figure out. And I knew going into it, if it wasn't what I enjoyed doing, then I could always have the option to like pivot or do something else. And at least then I'd been working and been kind of, I could then have something on my CV to go off and get another apprenticeship and
There
kind
gave
of
you sort of some
move on from that.
flexibility, I suppose, what you're saying.
Hmm.
Is that you knew that if you weren't quite sure exactly what you wanted to do, you could try that, and if it didn't quite land right, you knew that you could change to something else.
Yeah, so the company I ended up working for is Volvo Trucks, which was they had a branch in Norwich and Thetford and a few different places in East Anglia, and they had, I think it was on a yearly basis they would get new apprentices on, because I think it's one of those industries where they really struggle with. They retain people really, really well. They have people that started their career in one workshop and then stay for years and years and decades and retire. Like it's one of those kind of places where people just enjoy the job that they do. They're well supported by this kind of really massive international company, and just stay on for kind of years and years. And they advertised and kind of interviewed people on a yearly basis around the time that you leave school and sixth form. So it's kind of worked really well that I, in the July or whatever it was of, had found this apprenticeship, interviewed for it, was realised I kind of went into it knowing that because it was basically an apprenticeship to be a truck mechanic, and I knew that I wanted to do something practical, and that kind of was a part of my brain that I'd used in the kind of courses that I was doing and outside of, like in DT and all that kind of thing, as well as outside of school, like in bands and that kind of thing, like putting stuff together and problem solving. So landed the apprenticeship based on those skills and kind of the stuff that I was doing up until that point. But yeah, was really lucky. They kind of hired 2 or 3 people a year to then be on this course that was, I think, 3 years, and then at the end of it, it's basically a guaranteed job. And you kind of train over time, and you kind of continue developing your career, but it's basically your career is with them. And I'd heard all these stories of kind of other people soon after I started that they have brothers that landed the job and then stayed for everything since then, and they kind of were inspired to then do the same thing. I kind of came into it. No, my brother had kind of done a similar engineering type apprenticeship, but other than that, I didn't kind of have a route into it in terms of I didn't know anybody that worked there and kind of at the company and all that kind of thing. But went on a limb and got it, which was really good.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you said there, didn't you, that what you've been doing, you know, the skills from the band and from what you've been doing in study as well, that helped you get the job. So those skills are really transferable, aren't they, from whatever you do, volunteering, you know, then that, you know, that obviously helps you get that role. Yeah,
because it was I kind of had to pull from, and I've done this quite a lot in terms of the interviews that I've done since, in terms of on the face of it, what I've done isn't necessarily obvious to be kind of a direct link to the job that I want to do next. So it's finding from all these different places a link to it that's not just fixing cars, being a mechanic essentially leading up to it. And I think that's definitely taught me and kind of changed my mindset about it going forward, because I've interviewed and got a new job kind of middle of last year and all that kind of thing. And it's still a constant process of this is above where I'm currently at, but where can I pull from in terms of my experience that isn't just directly I'm already doing this? Because if every job was like that, you wouldn't ever move, because it was just the skill set that you have and then it's somewhere else. Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things. So it's just been a constant thing, and that was the start of it, in a sense of kind of the jobs I did before then was working at restaurants and kitchens and that kind of thing. So it was the first kind of thing I had to properly interview for and sell myself in terms of these things don't necessarily sound on the face of it like being a mechanic and kind of having that skill set, but I managed to convince them and enjoyed it. But it wasn't meant to be in terms of that path of being employed by one place as an apprentice, staying on there for kind of your entire career. It just kind of didn't work out that way.
Yeah. So then you then went on and did your next part of your apprenticeship, which was it was quite away from home, wasn't it? So you had quite an interesting journey, but learnt so much. So I suppose, how did you find that role? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then what did that entail? Because I find this is really interesting, I always think.
Yeah, it's this kind of transitional bit that at the time I look back on it and think that it felt like ages that I had left the apprenticeship that I was doing and kind of had a bit of a path where the kind of trigger for it was I'd stayed on until COVID. And although kind of truck mechanics were key workers at that time, they lost a lot of the regular work they had at MOTs and that kind of thing due to businesses that weren't kind of key to their industries or wherever else, just not needing to have their fleet of trucks serviced and all the rest of it. So I was furloughed not because I couldn't be at work, but because we just weren't busy enough to have the apprentices to do the things they need to do to further their training in this gap of time where you couldn't go to college and that kind of thing. It just wasn't doing enough, and they kind of just pared back the team to quite a small number of people. So I kind of realised over COVID I had, for the first time in my life, nothing going on. Like, it's probably the last time I'll have that kind of period of no responsibility at all until I retire, basically, which is such a unique position. Like, nobody else, like no other generation really had that in a way, because I left school at that time, did this apprenticeship, got furloughed from it, and was just like, there's nothing in terms of, like, I can't be doing anything other than relaxing and kind of thinking about the future for 6 months and overthink things at the best of times. So it was just a long time of, essentially I came around to the realisation that I wasn't getting on with the job I was doing, and if there was a way to transition out of that, I should take it. And the kind of branch that I was doing the apprenticeship at, they offered me, and I think about this quite often, but they offered me a route that was a separate position within the same company. And I hadn't told many people this, but just before I kind of was transitioning and left the company, they said, we understand that kind of you've not grown up doing this kind of skill set. Like, they kind of prefaced it by saying, we'll support you no matter what, in terms of, if you want to carry on the role that you want to do, then obviously we'll support you with that. It's 3 years, you've got time to get really, really good at it and be employed by us. But if you want to go down a different route, then there's an office position available in, like, the parts department.
Yeah.
Which is like a shorter apprenticeship, still an apprenticeship and then a job at the end of it. But they were desperate for people and said, if you want to pivot and do that. And I thought about that for a while, but I think it's looking back on it, it's so obvious, but the things that I wasn't really gelling with in terms of doing the job were outside of just what position I was in and kind of training and feeling like I was kind of taking a long time to build up the skills that other people had as they came in almost. It was just the kind of, I needed to do something creative. I needed to do something that used up kind of my mindset and my kind of attention and all that kind of thing. I kind of overthink things and have a kind of mindset where there's quite complicated things going on, but I can keep track of it all and all that kind of thing. And as an apprentice, when you're training, the whole idea is it's an environment where it's kind of spelled out for you and kind of led into it. And I kind of just wanted to do it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes, yeah.
So it just kind of, I didn't gel in that in terms of that sense, and kind of realised that was further, that was beyond.
So actually, it's sort of like a bit like the environment in a way, isn't it? It's that sort of, you realised that it wasn't like you, because, you know, what you've done growing up was very creative, like your band, your music, isn't it? And theatre, like we'll talk about, but do you know what I mean? But they're all very creative things, aren't they? So very different to working in servicing trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like we talked about, I went into it thinking, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't, and if it does, then great. So this kind of 6 monthly period, which it felt like so much longer at the time, but it's because I had to tell family and friends and that kind of thing 3 times over that I wanted to do something different. So I left this apprenticeship. I then had a part-time job, did various bits and pieces just to kind of make the money that I was earning in this apprenticeship and kind of continue that. Because at that point I had a car to run and that kind of thing. But I found a course they were running at a college that I could have gone to at A-level, but didn't, and kind of had a thought of at the time. It was the Access Creative College, the kind of music events-based kind of A-level kind of college that they have in Norwich and all over the country, where they specialise in things like teaching people how to run events, but also have some of the practical skills of putting on a gig. And I kind of had some of that already from being a band, so that kind of thing. I've been on one side of it and thought maybe I'll enjoy the other side, and that's kind of how I applied for it, interviewed, and kind of all that kind of thing. And again, pulled from those various bits and pieces and got the position. And it was the last opportunity I had to do a course that was free, because I was 18 at the time and I was just about to turn 19. At that point, you then got to pay for it. But so I kind of didn't stick around for that for very long. I kind of stayed for a few months, one term up until Christmas, basically from September or whenever all I started. And I kind of left that because the practical skills that I was learning in like the weekly practical sessions, they had this small studio that they used as like a little venue. And every week you'd set up the sound and lighting for a full band, but because it was over COVID, or kind of the kind of aftermath of it in a way, it wasn't to an audience. There wasn't that element to it. It was like you set up for a live stream, and then that was it, in terms of like you just set it all up and they go, well done, but we can't actually do a gig at this point. We could just record stuff or whatever. And and really got on with that side of it. But the more theory-based side of things of like planning events and that kind of thing, because it was an events production course, that I thought, oh, I could just do the practical side of it and that'd be fine. That side of it I didn't get on with. So again, it was kind of one of those things of
Yeah.
figuring out that
Yeah.
part of the industry that I now kind of am interested in isn't for me. Um, and at that point left the course that I was doing to do an apprenticeship that actually Access were through the NCCI, which is the National College for Creative Industries, remotely trained something called a creative venue technician in lots of different venues all over the country. And it was through Access. So I had this odd conversation with the president of the sixth form of, I'm leaving, but I'm also still being trained by Access in a way. So there's this weird kind of back and forth of, oh, but do you want to stay there and stay doing stuff here? And it's like, well, I am going to go somewhere and be paid and be practically doing it. And it's also Access that's doing the course. So I had to kind of convince them that I was leaving, but not necessarily leaving. Not leaving their system, I guess. Um, but yeah, I was lucky to land, as you say, I was quite far away from home. I landed the apprenticeship that I did till completion, which was based with a community group, an arts group, where they kind of produced these amazing theatre shows, and there was kind of over 100 active volunteers that kind of worked on every side of this performing arts charity. They, up until the point I joined, were a charity and a group that would use other people's venues around the Cambridge area, specifically around Ely. So they were a group from like the late 90s, so they'd been going for 20 plus years at that point. And they'd just been given a big load of lottery funding to convert a mill in the town they were based, in Cambridgeshire. So they were converting this mill into a theatre, and as part of that, they were told to hire 2 apprentices. You're kind of opening this venue. They had one member of staff at the time, who was the administrator, who had a hugely broad role to do everything from manage a charity shop to manage all of the finances for all of these mad theatre shows and all that kind of thing. Like, she was an amazing multitasker and had a lot of things that she had going on. But I joined along with kind of an office-based apprentice to help this existing member of staff. And my role was, in this brand new venue, to assist with the kind of the existing technical assistance they had through kind of a freelancer they used for 15 plus years, and assist this guy to install everything into the theatre, and then kind of from that point forward worked for this venue and trained and did everything for them. But yeah, it was over an hour away from home, and I was lucky enough to find it just through the National Apprenticeships website. I kind of the reason that I found it is I took because there was not really anything around East Anglia at the time. It was tough times in COVID and all that kind of thing. Like, it was hardly anyone was hiring. They were just kind of struggling to retain the staff they had, given doing less shows and less audience capacity and all that kind of thing, let alone hire new people in. So it was understandable. And that's kind of a similar kind of thing now. It's still not really gone away, those limitations. But I found it by just putting the distance preferences on this website to like 100 miles, just to see if there's anything out there anywhere close.
Further than you did.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was 60 miles away where it was, so it came up as 50 or something, and I went, oh, that's all right, not knowing how far that was to try.
Back in the day.
Yeah. So I found this apprenticeship, and yeah, I kind of really got on with kind of their job description. Really kind of it put a lot of weight on kind of the community aspect of the group and kind of the youth members specifically, and kind of this atmosphere they built up. And I thought back to when I was younger in the theatre group in the town where I grew up, which I was a part of from the age of 8 until I was 15. Kind of went through all the different age groups, did lots of kind of mixed plays and then kind of like mixed group productions, and then just as kind of I graduated to the seniors, then kind of moved on to other
I have
things.
seen you on stage.
Yes, at various ages, yeah. But it just brought back memories of that, and I thought that's my in terms of another thing in an interview that I can pull from and say I've not got the skills necessarily other than through the course that I was doing at the time, and I thought it might be enough just to say I'm currently learning the practical skills you need to put on events in this college in the course that I was doing, and I've got this past to draw from and know just how important it was to me and the kind of the friends that I had at the time to build up confidence and all that kind of thing. So again, to kind of pulled this together and then interviewed with a few members of the board and the president and managed to get this apprenticeship.
Brilliant. And do you think your passion came through for it as well? Because I, you know, that's obviously what you enjoyed doing. So say, like you as a child, you were part of the theatre, weren't you? And then obviously,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? So do you think that some of your passion, although you hadn't necessarily got all the skills, that came through? I don't know.
Yeah, I think because talking about it in kind of it's taken 20 minutes to to describe kind of from doing an apprenticeship I didn't enjoy to
Yeah.
kind of finding this new position. I think, as I say, it feels like a much longer period of time, but it was finally kind of feeling like I had something that I enjoy doing in every aspect. In terms of it was what I was interested in, it's what I grew up doing, but hadn't come back to in a while. Like it was a kind of it was 3 4 year gap in between finishing the theatre group and doing other things, and then came back to it. Um, but yeah, it was probably 3 years because I was 18 when I kind of came back around. But yeah, it was just kind of a breath of fresh air to think this is what I am meant to do, and it took 6 months all told to kind of figure that out. So I'm definitely look back on it and kind of think, oh, it could have taken a lot longer, because I started now looking back at my career at the age of 18 and then turned 19 shortly after. So it's like that's a rare thing in itself, because that would have been when I left sixth form, really. If I'd have stayed on, it would be 2020, and then kind of the months after that, um, that would have ended up being. Yeah, I think it was just the you get the feeling sometimes that you just know that that's what you're meant to be doing, and it was just I didn't have that before. Did a course and didn't have that, and kind of it was a big question mark in terms of where this is leading to in terms of the A levels I was studying, the apprenticeship that I landed, leaving that and then doing another course and thinking where does this lead, and then finally running an apprenticeship where I knew obviously it was a charity and their finance and that kind of thing. It wasn't a guaranteed job at the end of it
Yeah.
because of various kind of limitations. It ended up being that,
Yeah.
but at the time I didn't know. But it was at least 2 years of this is what I enjoy doing. This is what I'm
Brilliant.
kind of passionate about.
And I do talk about you because, well, if anyone's listening, because you did live in your van for quite a while, didn't you, as well? So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't all a luxury, was it?
yeah.
You were quite away from home, and sometimes you
Mm.
have to, if it's a job you really love, maybe you have to do those other things. I mean, I remember your mum phoned me saying, "Oh, Sam's in the van tonight. It's freezing cold
Yeah,
outside."
yeah,
So you've done
yeah.
a lot
It was.
of. I don't know what the right word is, but you've sort of, because you loved it, you continued, and resilience, I suppose that's what it comes down to,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. It was needs must in a way in terms
Yeah,
of I always knew that I wanted to get to the end of the apprenticeship. Leaving it wasn't an option in terms of I knew that was what I wanted to do, and I'd be back at square one somewhere else if I did decide to leave. So I did whatever I possibly could to make it work, and that was kind of begging people to let me use their spare room in the winter months and that kind of thing. And then the rest of the time, yeah, had a tiny combo van.
yeah.
I say it's a camper van, but it was kind of a bed platform and a mattress in the back of this tiny van. But it was a temporary home for two
Yeah,
nights a week, whatever it was. Like I managed to work out the shifts that I was doing
yeah.
because it was a fairly new venue. It wasn't as busy as it ended up being, and by the time it was quite busy, I'd finished my apprenticeship and was able to move out and move that way in a flat on my own at 21, which is kind of a kind of feat in itself. Um, but yeah, I was willing to kind of do those things because I just had this feeling that I had to get to the end of it because I couldn't do anything else because I'd left another friendship and all that kind of thing. But however hard it is, I still got so much enjoyment out of it, and the people that were there were very supportive of me, knowing that I'd kind of moved across essentially, not fully yet, but was doing a job in a town where I hadn't ever been to before. Cambridge kind of I'd visited maybe once or twice when I was a lot younger. I hadn't been back that way, but this group, like I say, the 100 volunteers at least that were active and doing various events and theatre shows and things, they were an amazing community of people that all came together doing careers and had lives outside of the group itself, but would kind of dedicate an entire week at the end of a production and then two a day and an evening a week to kind of rehearsing the productions and at whatever role they were in, whether it was kind of a practical stage role or someone that was helping me with the tech or kind of just an actor. They all supported each other so well, and I just kind of was included in that, which was great. And I think as much as I kind of put up with things that I look back on and kind of think I wouldn't do that again, and if someone else I knew was younger was doing that, I think, oh my god. Um, but I do think
Yeah.
it was worthwhile to,
Yeah.
to have that experience and have that
Yeah.
support to get me through it.
So really, an apprenticeship, the apprenticeship route has done really. Do you know what I mean? That's provided you with a lot of options, isn't it? A lot, and you know, and to find your way. You know.
Yeah, I left it kind of, that took the longest route ever to end up with A levels because the course that I ended up doing was a level 3 MBQ that's equivalent, I think, to two A levels. So I had this brief interlude in a way to then come back and have the kind of the qualification that I could have had with predicted grades and that kind of thing within a year. Uh, and it ended up taking 2.5 years to get there. But yeah, it provided me not only with that, but so much more in terms of that was, as I say, the start of my career. It was the job that I did put a lot of hours and kind of a lot of work outside of the events that were happening into furthering my own skills. But it was kind of mad and complicated, and everything was a challenge, especially kind of to begin with when I was still starting out. As I kind of talked about earlier, it's finally using that kind of focused part of my brain, kind of like having that complete problem to solve. And I've just kind of followed that through to the job I do now, and kind of everything is kind of fed into that, and that's why I talk to friends about it and whatever else. And I think I couldn't do anything else at this point, and I know for a fact that I didn't get on with doing other stuff. It's not like I've just started out and that's all I know. But at this point, it kind of is in terms of the career that I've done and actually working rather than being an apprentice. It's all I've ever done, and I count myself incredibly lucky to say that that I've had that as my career.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great. And then you've obviously left the. Well, you'd be too old for that
Yeah,
apprenticeship now. So
yeah.
now you've got another job, and your career has progressed again, hasn't it? So
Mm.
it's
It's
brilliant.
the first full-time job that I've applied for because I obviously did an apprenticeship and then was offered a job at the end of it. The charity again kind of maintained three members of staff, even with this crazy venue going on, and had another administrator that took over from the last one that again massively dedicated to the role. And she, instead of having an entire charity to run the admin side of it, was in a charity plus an entire theatre. So it was like another entire role in itself. And thankfully, it was kind of we were able to do the jobs that we do that were massively varied and massively kind of um, responsible for many different things. Again, because of the people that were unpaid and volunteering their time to come and assist, even things like day-to-day tasks that weren't anything to do with the shows. People would offer their assistance, and kind of having that. Without that, it wouldn't exist in terms of if it was just literally trying to have someone to manage, say, an office as an individual person and then the company.
Yeah,
It just doesn't happen in terms of like that is separate roles, but it was a very unique situation to be in.
that's
Um,
brilliant though, isn't it? That volunteer, and you talk about the community with that, and that's so
yeah,
great, isn't it? Not obviously makes
yeah,
such
yeah.
a difference.
Mm.
So I
And
suppose it
it's
wouldn't
the
have
thing,
existed, would it?
yeah, and it's the thing that I've learned through now being in the industry for quite a while is if you look at like obviously you kind of look at things through the lens of take it at face value in terms of theatre shows and events and that kind of thing. And the thing that I've learned about that is it's not just about that one charity and that one location, but every production you see of anything that's deeply creative in terms of a theatre show or a music show or whatever else, it is a similar kind of thing. It's that group community mentality of everybody coming together and making it work. No production, no kind of anything that you see in terms of the live events industry. And I didn't really realize this before, but it's many people behind the scenes, not just kind of filling a job and doing that kind of thing, but supporting each other and propping up this vision for an idea. And I've been lucky enough to do productions, kind of standalone productions. The biggest thing I've worked on in my career has been at the Watford Palace Theatre. It was a kind of brand new theatre piece that was kind of just had a preview run of like a few shows, hoping that it would kind of move on to bigger things. But that was moving up to a 900-seater venue for a kind of a temporary show that I was doing, and wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of other people. And it was kind of everyone had a shared vision around it. And it was the first time I'd seen, not in the job that I was doing, this group spring up out of nowhere of people, the director and stage manager and people that were designing it, the writer, all coming together and wanting desperately to get this out there and get people to see the show and see the kind of story that it was telling. And I just look at everything completely differently now in terms of that kind of thing. It's everywhere. Every concert tour you go to, every theatre show, all that kind of thing. It's so many people that aren't just filling a job and doing a 9 to 5, and that's just their role. They're supporting each other and supporting this production into existence. They're willing it into existence, which is, I think, a
What
really
do you think
really
about that?
amazing
It's really
thing.
interesting you say that. I think the number of things, that you go to, you just
Yeah.
whatever is on the stage, isn't it? You just don't
Mm.
think about all the stuff that goes on behind
Yeah,
the
yeah,
scene, to
yeah.
actually make it happen.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
many
yeah.
things, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's fascinating. So,
Yeah.
so you're in your role now. So you've got you're in a role, aren't you? So you've then progressed, and so what do you, I suppose, what do you love about your career? What
Mm.
sort of, you know, what do you love about it?
Um, just to kind of like cap off the journey that I've had, I'll briefly explain what I've done since leaving the kind of the company that I stayed for after doing this apprenticeship. I, at the middle of last year, had three goals in mind in terms of where I wanted my career to progress to. I wanted to be in a bigger team, in a larger venue, and to earn a little bit more money doing the job that I had kind of built up and built this skill and this mindset around. And I'm happy to say that I kind of achieved all of those things, and it was an amazing feeling to know that I was kind of progressing in that way. And that's through a Cambridge University college that I now work for, Queen's, and they were advertising for an AV and theatre technician, so kind of a multi-schooled role again, but within a kind of more established team, a much kind of a small part of a really massive whole in terms of like the entire college. If you think about it that way, is
Yeah.
it they kind of
Yeah.
I find it hard to wrap my head around sometimes how many people are there. It's over 50 people that they employ on a regular basis, and I'm just a small part of that now.
Yeah.
Um, but I was kind of didn't know going into it whether I'd get on with that, and I really do. But the thing that I love about it from seeing that, because I now work quite closely with students rather than kind of purely volunteers and all ages that kind of come together in this charity community environment. I now work very closely with students that, around doing a university at the University of Cambridge, somehow find the time to not only put on shows in the theatre that we provide, kind of anything they ask for, but write new productions and then get them kind of agreed to be performed by kind of the society that has been going for almost a century at this point, or over a century, I think. No, it's 80 plus years in terms of the theatre group that's like the student-led thing. Is back in the 40s that it started out. And they put a real emphasis on new writing and kind of that kind of thing. So that boggles my mind in terms of how they can multitask and be able to do that. But they're also passionate about it. And it's that same thing of, it's another confirmation to me of that kind of group effort to put something on. So I guess the thing I love about it now is just kind of seeing that process from start to finish. So we kind of talked about it in terms of how I now view everything else in terms of the industry and shows and music shows and that kind of thing. On this kind of small scale, people are doing shows for the first time. They've kind of got this creative vision for, and some of them are quite happy with kind of whatever's kind of available to them in terms of quite basic tech, and other ones want to push the boundaries for really kind of lifting this thing that they've poured their heart and soul into while doing a degree. So yeah, I think I love that side of it. Of it's and I talked about it with the technical manager that I now work with, who's lovely. But we've had conversations fairly recently about, we love what we do. It's in our minds the only thing we could ever do in terms of like the career that we have and the job that we do, and we can see the good that it does in the world and kind of how it brings people together and all that kind of thing. But we have to remind ourselves that we are both very lucky to be doing the job that we do,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that ultimately it's one of those things that wasn't a key worker thing over COVID for a reason, in terms of like, as much as people needed it, and people always need art, and I'll never kind of say that it's not an important thing. It's not. It is a viable industry. It is needed, but we're privileged to be able to set some sound equipment up or put some lights on in a nice way, and that's our job. Like it's I just feel so lucky in terms of like, ultimately it's a very specific thing that everyone's doing, and everyone involved in it is like, they wrote some words on a page and now you've got to act it out to 40 people, and it's like, we then facilitate how to elevate that to a kind of glossy look. But yeah, I guess I love, and I'm kind of still pinching myself about the fact that ultimately is what I'm doing, is putting lights up in a grid and then putting them on in a nice way, and that is the creative side of what I do, in discussion with other people, and that's kind of the collaborative side, and practically doing it, knowing the safest way to do it is kind of the practical side. But that I'm able to marry the interests that I have and the skill set that I built up, and I attach a lot of kind of fun around in terms of what I do. It's putting all of that together, and that's my job and my career. That's the thing that I love about it. I feel incredibly lucky about, and hope that people can at least strive to achieve in their lives in terms of like it could be anything for anyone and it's different for every single person. But I'm lucky enough that I found that at 19 and have pursued that ever since. And it's afforded me to live fairly close to Cambridge and do the job that I do and all that kind of thing. So I think I just feel very, very lucky for the job that I do, and therefore that's what I love about it.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I think don't make you blush, but I think you are a real inspiration because I think you've gone through that whole journey from what you've explained on here, and like you say now, you living near Cambridge, you've got this it's a great job, and you're doing what you love doing. I mean, that's everybody's dream, isn't it, to do something that they love doing? So
Yeah.
So no, that's absolutely brilliant. That's really, really good. So thank you for sharing that. I hope that's been of use to some people because I think well, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know what to do. And there isn't necessarily, like you say, you can change. If it doesn't fit,
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I hope that people take away from my ramblings about kind of summing up my career in half an hour. But it's that it can happen at any age. It can happen at any kind of point in someone's life. There's always something that you can be doing to find something that is your thing. I think that's the thing that I hope that anybody can achieve. In terms of like, obviously it's not necessarily financially viable for someone to leave a job and do another job, and they may not have any of the skills to pivot their career in that way. But my hope is that I started out the thing that I did that got me into theatre and kind of opened my eyes to that as an option was I volunteered for the theatre group, the theatre that I used to go to as an 8-year-old and then a 15-year-old and all that kind of thing. I went back to that theatre and I volunteered my time to sit in on a few events they had, see how they programmed events, the pantomime that year and all that kind of thing, and volunteered my time and gave a few hours a week when you kind of add it up during that time when I was doing the course in Norwich and didn't know what I wanted to do. I worked within the limitations that I had, but still got out there and still did things that opened my eyes to what it was that I wanted to do. So I think I hope that anybody can find things like that, find these groups in your local community, find a club that you can be part of, something that you think this might be my thing, and if it's not, then at least I tried. But just to do something to put yourself out there, and if it ever kind of comes to you're ever lucky enough, like I was, to kind of find a course or an apprenticeship or a job, and you feel like you've had enough experience to go out and take a leap and try and achieve that, then at least you've tried. If it doesn't work out, like at least kind of it's the very first step in terms of finding these groups and volunteering your time and all of that kind of thing. But it could be the start of something like an entire career in my case, or just something that you do and volunteer your time, like the group that I used to work at, an evening a week and a Sunday, and you go, well, it's not for me, but at least I tried it. I think if I could advocate for anything in terms of what led me to the path and the career that I have, is just trying new things, trying stuff and seeing where it goes at any age, at any kind of circumstance, if you can, because you never know.
Exactly. And volunteering is such a great thing, isn't it? And there's so many opportunities out there for people.
Yeah, people are always looking for, like, as much as I think the thing that I was lucky enough that I went back to the theatre because they advertised through Facebook and they said, we're looking for volunteers for the pantomime and then beyond that. And I applied and knew the director that was still around, all that kind of thing, and was able to get in that way. And was able to have it not be as official and just kind of came in and sat on shows and things like that. But I was lucky enough to do that and then find an apprenticeship through the National Apprenticeships website that I then got. But a lot of places will always need people, but won't always advertise for it. So I think the other main piece of advice I'd give to people is places, especially like theatre groups and that kind of thing, if that's of any interest to anyone, places like that won't necessarily outwardly put themselves out there for help. Like I needed it when I was doing the apprenticeship and the kind of job that I did after that. I could have done with a few volunteers, but we never really crossed that line of let's put it on the Facebook page or let's properly advertise for help, because it just feels like one of those things where it could be a pride thing, it could be whatever else, but if someone had emailed out of nowhere or kind of got in touch through someone they knew from the group or whatever else and said, I'm interested in helping out, and there was a few people that did do that, and therefore they then became part of the group, and I used them kind of, not used them, but kind of I got them involved in terms of some shows. But it just takes that one thing, that reaching out, because a lot of places won't advertise in the traditional ways.
Yeah, and those skills can be transferable, which you've sort of talked about as you've gone through. But those skills in volunteering, you can transfer them into a number of different things, can't you? So
Yeah, just put yourself out there, and it's a hard thing. And I took the kind of easy route in a way because I could have done that, and I think I've had a few times when I kind of was looking for what I could do next and thought about freelancing potentially and taking the skills that I built up in the first job that I had and doing lots of different things. And I emailed 6 different venues, got replies from 3 of them, and 2 of them were a no, and 1 of them was a maybe, and that kind of was enough in terms of it didn't lead to any because I didn't go down that route, but I still received an acknowledgement from those places.
yes,
So I think,
yeah,
yeah, just you'll if you're lucky enough to have connections through your family members or your friends or whatever else, then use those to get in the door and get the kind of the skills, or just email people, find the contact details for someone at a local theatre or anywhere, and introduce yourself and see where it goes
yeah, yeah. No, it's really good.
because you,
Really,
you never know.
well, you never know.
Yeah.
Never know. Never know.
Mm.
So what are your top tips? Is what would you say? Volunteering is a really good thing.
And put yourself out there. It'll take a long time of you reaching out to people before they then start reaching out to you. I think knowing the kind of the freelancing industry as much as I kind of have kind of rarely worked within it at this point, but it's going to be a long time of reaching out to people, kind of pestering people, getting yourself out there before it then starts to kind of come back the other way in terms of unless you're known to a place, you're known to kind of it's a lot of word of mouth still in terms of the industry is. I think a lot of people hope that they do something really, really well, and then other things come from it, and someone goes, "Oh, who did the lighting design for this show?" Blah blah blah, and that does happen, especially kind of further along, definitely. But I think especially to begin with, and I've known it from a friend that I have in the industry that pivoted and became freelance a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and he just was lucky enough, like me, to find online something to apply for, and then got there. But everything that he's done since then was a case of through that initial opportunity that he had to become a casual member of staff for a venue, or literally putting himself out there and hoping that you get something in return. So yeah, definitely kind of whatever you can do, whether it's a connection that's right there in front of you, to utilize that, or create your own kind of luck in a way, because you'll either get really lucky with something kind of coming up and being an easy thing to apply for or kind of get involved with, or you put some hard work in and you kind of make that opportunity for yourself in a way. That's kind of the other option, but it's harder, and you'll feel like you're not getting anywhere if you don't get a response or that kind of thing. But I'd say definitely try, especially if there's something that I can't do a job in this right now, but I think I'd be really good in it or whatever else. Then yeah, put yourself out there.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, if anyone's watching who's at school or something, as well. That
Yeah.
Or we're going to say you.
Yeah, the people that I
were at
yeah.
theatre school, weren't you?
And the people that I talk about in terms of people that were introduced to the charity I used to work for and then got back in touch and said I'd like to do something, anything, let me know, were people that were school age. So they were people that were kind of going into A levels and that kind of thing around the age that I did, and it was kind of a full circle moment for me to go to those people and accept that help and kind of give them the opportunity that I had elsewhere and kind of complete that loop in terms of they were school age and I was over the moon to give them that opportunity and say, here's a little bit of me giving back to. It was a yearly tradition at that point in terms of I stuck around and did 3 pantomimes at the theatre that I used to work for, and every single year was who can I pull from around that's kind of interested in volunteering their time to give people the opportunity that I had working on a panto for the first time as the first volunteering thing I ever did. So I kind of created a bit of a tradition of it of every year I would get volunteers involved and people that were interested in helping out and younger, and it was really, really good to give back in that way. But it's not an impossible thing. It's a challenge for sure, but I'd say it's within grasp if you kind of use what you have available and just try really, really hard to make that for yourself.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, well, thank you so much, Sam. And
That's all right.
I can't wait to see what your career. what happens next?
I came into this we had a brief discussion before this, obviously, and said I came into it not having a huge idea of what the tips would be to give to people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that through summing up what I've done so far, I've been able to find the things that were most important to me and the things that I can give to other people. So it was a rambling kind of journey to get there, but I'm glad that I found
Very is.
something to give to people at the end.
Well, thank you for your time. So I know you've travelled to work, had a day at work. So I appreciate you talking to me this evening. And
Yeah, absolutely fine.
so, so thank you very much, and we will catch up soon. Thanks for your time.
Lovely. Thank
See you
you.
later.